Order. The House and Committee on the National War Memorial Park Pukeahu Empowering Bill is resumed. Members, before the dinner break we were debating parts 1 and 2 in schedules 1 to 4 and 6 to 10. Andrew Williams had the call. He has just under 2 minutes remaining should he wish to avail himself. He does not. Is any other member seeking the call? Holly Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to take a short call in the committee stages of the National War Memorial Park Pukeahu Empowering Bill. And may I start by saying, as I believe my colleagues have at other stages of this bill, that the Green Party is strongly in support of the objective of a National War Memorial Park at Pukeahu, and that we share the desire, if it would be possible, for this to be completed in time for the Gallipoli Centenary and Anzac Day 2015. We believe the proposed memorial park will provide New Zealanders and overseas visitors with a dedicated space in which to reflect on the loss and sacrifice of life in numerous armed conflicts, to pay respect to the dead, to contemplate the causes for which those conflicts were fought, and also, importantly, to consider the cause of peace and to reflect on how future armed conflicts may be avoided. It also would provide a haven of much-needed green space within the busy environs of the capital city. However, Mr. Chair, we've found ourselves unable to continue to support the bill, despite some of the amendments made at the Select Committee stage, because of our fundamental concerns about the extraordinary powers granted by the legislation. But I would like to, at this point, Mr. Chair, acknowledge the work of the Select Committee, the Transport and Industrial Relations Committee, which I sat in on for the duration of this bill. And I think the first point to note about that Select Committee process is that it was an extremely constrained one and very challenging for the committee to do its work within the time frame, and indeed for the officials to do the work within the time frame allocated. And that's part actually of the concern that we have with this bill. But within those constraints, I think the committee did work well, and I enjoyed my experience on the committee. And I am pleased to say that some of the amendments that the committee has made are minor improvements to the bill. For example, the adoption of changes recommended by the Regulations Review Committee, which somewhat improve the transparency and accountability of the Order in Council process by making sure that ministers have to explore every other available option relevant before moving to making orders in Council. And indeed to beef up and improve the community forum and improve the number of times that community forum is delegated to meet. So there are some changes that the committee made which do improve the bill. But unfortunately, the fundamental concerns that the Green Party has with the legislation remain despite those changes, because not only does it remove and replace normal planning processes, which limits the ability for the public and key stakeholders to participate in decision-making about the park, it also grants the ability for the Crown to make wide-reaching changes by order in Council without the usual parliamentary scrutiny. And we're very concerned in the Green Party about the precedent that these powers set about the primacy of the rule of law in New Zealand. And we heard at the committee a particularly interesting submission from the what are they called? From the from the Legislative Council, who expressed concern that if we put aside the rule of law in the case of this legislation in order to expedite what is indeed a noble goal in the National War Memorial Park, it will become easier to put it aside again in for future legislation. And indeed we believe that that is what has already taken place with the fact that we have this legislation, this extraordinary legislation in front of the House in the first place. This legislation is based upon the provisions provided for in response to the Canterbury earthquake, which was a national emergency, and we were told at the time that those provisions for order in Council and those extraordinary powers granted to the executive by that legislation were necessary only because it was a response to a drastic national emergency and were so extraordinary that we need not be concerned about their use elsewhere. And yet here, not so very long after that, we have a piece of legislation legislation affecting those same powers for what is absolutely not a national emergency. In fact, it's been foreseen for a very long time that we might want to commemorate the centenary of Gallipoli in some appropriate way in 2015. And indeed, the plans for this particular memorial park have been in place for a long time. And the urgency with which this legislation has been addressed was only necessary because of a decision to halt funding for the project, a long pause in its progress, and then a very rapid decision to advance with it after all. And that's not good process, Mr. Chair, and it doesn't make for good legislation.
There are a number of questions. We move to part one, and the first question is that Te Ururoa Flavel's amendment set out on SOP 131 be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no.
Party vote.
Noes have it. Party vote. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party.
14 in favour.
New Zealand First.
Eight votes in favour.
Māori Party. Mana.
1 in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
1 vote opposed.
United Future.
1 vote opposed.
The ayes of 59, repeat, the ayes of 59, the noes of 61, the amendment is not agreed to. The question now is the part one stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question now is that part two stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. We move to the schedules. The question is that schedule one stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that schedule 2 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that schedule 3 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that schedule 4 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Members, schedule 5 was deleted in the select committee stage, so we move to schedule 6. The question is that schedule 6 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that schedule 7 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that schedule 8 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Excuse me. The question is that schedule 9 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that schedule 10 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that clause 1 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that clause 2 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. I will report this bill without amendment presently. Members, we move to the second bill, which is the consideration of the Customs and Excise Tobacco Products Budget Measures Amendment Bills. And the question is that